2009. It was only a year after The Dark Knight had come out, and became one of the most beloved movies ever. The safe bet would have been to make a movie tie-in game and call it a day, but Rocksteady had bigger plans. They wanted to make a Batman game that would stand on its own, a game with its own unique identity, with a plot and setting inspired by the source comics, not the movie that had just come out. A game that would come to be known as Batman: Arkham Asylum. For a game released in the 2000s, Arkham Asylum's visuals hold up exceptionally well, aside from those unfortunately low-resolution pre-rendered cutscenes that plagued many games from that era. Once you're actually in the game, though, you get to see the art department's talents on full display. This game holds up exceptionally well and still looks fantastic to this day. Batman and Joker in particular both look excellent. The Batsuit design they decided to go with is great. It's a nice, modern, and tactical-looking reimagining of the classic comic suit, while still keeping everything that made that suit iconic. The all-black suits you'd find in the films look good, but it always felt like they'd sacrificed too much of the original design to get there. Arkham Asylum makes no sacrifices in giving Batman a more modern, practical look while still looking sharp. This would easily be one of Batman's best looks, if he didn't kind of look like a sausage. Joker especially looks incredible. We're talking about a character that's had so many different, distinct designs over the years. Some of these designs are great, while others are not. The artists at Rocksteady managed to take everything that's ever worked about a Joker design, and they went ahead and rolled it all into one perfect look. The slightly exaggerated proportions really do this design wonders. No one's chin is that pointy, but it just works for this character. This is, without a doubt, the best the Joker has ever looked. In my opinion, this is the definitive version of this character. When I think of the Joker, this is what comes to mind. The other villains look great as well, and we'll get to them soon. The only character designs that are really lacking here are the random thugs and less important characters. They don't get the same love and care that the more important characters do, and as such end up kinda looking like waxed monsters a lot of the time. These ones definitely did not age as well as the others. The gameplay in Arkham Asylum has been criticized a lot in the past, and most criticisms against it are definitely valid. The core gameplay can be pretty simply broken up into two major categories: combat and stealth. The combat is pretty simple, mostly consisting of attacking and counterattacking whenever a dude's head glows blue. It gets a bit more involved when they start introducing enemies with knives, guns, and stun rods, or the big Titan dudes, but the combat never gets particularly difficult at any point, at least on normal. Though it's worth noting that the blue glow goes away on the highest difficulty, so you actually have to pay attention to the enemy's body language to predict when they're gonna attack. Stealth is also very simple. Because of detective vision, you always know where every threat is at any given time. Stealth games tend to take power away from the player, make them feel helpless, but Arkham Asylum does the opposite, and I think that's cool. I can understand why some would want more involved gameplay, but this game is first and foremost selling you a fantasy of being Batman. This is where the gameplay decisions they went with really pay off. It can feel real satisfying to stalk your prey from above, then swoop down to leave some goon hanging upside down from a gargoyle by his toes. The dialogue and animations also do a lot of the heavy lifting here, with the thugs growing increasingly paranoid as you slowly pick them off one by one, the whole time Joker berating them over the intercom. Neither the combat nor the stealth gameplay are particularly deep, but they're both in service of the broader experience that this game is providing. So I think the gameplay is exactly what it needs to be for this game specifically. To, really make you feel like Batman. That being said, the amount of unnecessarily long button-mashing great opening animations do not make me feel like Batman. The level design in this game takes some clear inspiration from Metroid and The Legend of Zelda, where unlocking new gadgets grants you access to places you couldn't get to before, slowly opening up more and more of the map. I think this kind of level design is great, and it does a lot with its fairly small map size without ever feeling redundant. Returning from Batman the Animated Series is the legendary Paul Dini, acclaimed Batman writer and co-creator of the DCAU. This guy not only has experience writing Batman, but adapting Batman. He was pretty much the perfect man to write the story for this game. The story is pretty sparse, but it's solid and effective. It's mostly an excuse to take you from one set piece or boss fight to the next, and it does so very effectively. But what it really excels at is its depictions of the characters. The writing for every character across the board, except Bane, is really solid and feels completely natural. Bringing on board an esteemed Batman writer such as Dini really paid off. There's an inherent understanding of the characters here that makes the whole experience just that much more enjoyable. The effect that the superb voice cast has in bringing these characters to life cannot be overstated. Bringing Batman and the Joker to life are none other than Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill, reprising the roles from Batman the Animated Series. I think it goes without saying that these two are the definitive voices for Batman and the Joker, and they're at their absolute best here. These guys' performances just embody both of these characters. The voice acting in this game is really great across the board, but these two really steal the show. Conroy and Hamill are both perfect in these roles. The game opens with Batman hauling Joker back to Arkham Asylum yet again, with an extended intro very reminiscent of Half-Life, involving Batman escorting Joker through the intensive treatment facility. Needless to say, this was all part of Joker's master plan. To no one's surprise, he escapes and takes control of the entire asylum. The intensive treatment facility pretty much serves as an extended tutorial, but once you leave and get to explore Arkham Island is when the game really feels like it starts to open up. And I have to praise the artists again, because Arkham Island looks fantastic, like something of a mix between Burton's Batman and the Gotham we see in Batman Begins. You know, before The Dark Knight came out and turned Gotham City into just Chicago. They really nailed the look of this whole place. While it clearly takes inspiration from other Batman material, this game has its own unique visual identity. It's unfortunate, then, that most players will spend half the game seeing everything in blue. Detective Vision is a good concept, clearly inspired by Assassin's Creed's Eagle Vision and Metroid Prime's visors before that. And unlike the dozens upon dozens of other games that would go on to use this exact same mechanic, it's one that I think really works for a character like Batman, who has the technology to justify such a mechanic. The issue with Detective Vision is how it takes all the hard work the artists did to make this game look as good as it does, and throws it all right in the trash, since that's what you're going to be looking at for a good chunk of your total playtime. That being said, it's really cool how Batman's eyes turn white just like the comics when he's in Detective Vision. Even when all you can see is just blue with orange and red highlights, this game still manages to look stylish. Batman ends up tracking down Harley Quinn to the medical facility, and he finds himself in the morgue where you have your first encounter with the Scarecrow. I'm a pretty big fan of Scarecrow's design in this game. I like the makeshift look of his costume. It's clearly his Arkham jumpsuit, but torn up and stitched back together into a pretty damn good looking Scarecrow getup. Naturally, Scarecrow's gameplay segments are hallucinations brought on by his fear toxin. They play out as 2D stealth sections where you have to avoid a giant Scarecrow's line of sight, and the giant Scarecrow looking around with his big old lighthouse eyes is just kinda goofy looking. Them trying to trick you into thinking your game crashed was pretty clever, though. So Batman rescues Commissioner Gordon, then Joker sicks Bane on you. In the near 2 decades between his debut in Nightfall and his big film appearance in The Dark Knight Rises, Bane got done dirty. Just about any external media featuring Bane portrayed him as little more than a mindless brute. It was really unfortunate, since the whole point of Bane in Nightfall was that he had da brains and da bronze. Unfortunately, Arkham Asylum was no exception to this trend, and the Bane we see here isn't exactly a savant. The boss fight primarily consists of you tricking him into running headfirst into walls. It's a pretty fun fight though, and it ends up teaching you how to deal with the Titan brutes you'll encounter later in the game. Overall, Bane's a fun boss fight that unfortunately suffered as far as characterization is concerned. So after sending the Batmobile careening into Bane, Batman learns about Joker's master plan. He's been having a doctor at Arkham make a supercharged version of Bane's venom known as Titan. The doctor dies, and Joker gets his hands on the Titan. So you go through the botanical gardens, which look fantastic by the way, and learn that the Titan is made from genetically modified plants found in the sewers below Arkham. You need to go down in the sewers below the island and collect spore samples to make an antidote for the Titan formula, where Killer Croc is of course waiting. The game builds up the dreaded encounter with Killer Croc from the very beginning, and it's definitely a highlight of the game. Killer Croc's segment is a really great extended sequence where you have to move carefully across these floating platforms to avoid making too much noise as you collect the spores. The sound design does most of the heavy lifting here. It sounds like he's everywhere at once, ready to pop out from underneath you at any moment. He occasionally pops out to chase you, though a quick batarang is enough to temporarily evade him. The best part comes when you've collected enough samples and have to make your way back out, leading to a great chase sequence where you have to sprint across the platforms to the end, culminating in you blowing up the ground underneath him. It's a really great, thrilling sequence. Ironically, it's considerably scarier than anything Scarecrow has to offer. But Poison Ivy is tearing the island apart with all these mutated plants, so you gotta go back to the botanical gardens and stop her. Poison Ivy is by far the best boss fight in the game. Every second of the fight, there's always something to keep you on your toes. It's a constant game of moving out of the way of her vines on the floor, dodging the spores she fires at you, taking out her henchmen, and remaining calm under a constant barrage of sexual moans. It's easily the most engaging fight in the game, and whoever was in charge of designing Poison Ivy knew exactly what they were doing. God, I miss 2009. So now it's time for the big finale. Joker decides to inject himself with the Titan formula, transforming into a big lumbering beast. It's a surprising moment, and it could have been really interesting if you actually fought Joker at all while he's this roided up monster. The vast majority of the fight involves taking on a horde of goons, and so little time is spent actually fighting Joker himself that it makes me wonder why they even decided to turn him into a hulking creature like this to begin with. The extent of your fight with Joker involves punching him a couple times after he falls down and his big fingers get stuck in the floor. It's just silly. The fight would hardly be any different if they just left him as a normal Joker-sized Joker. It just feels like this giant missed opportunity, and one that serves as an underwhelming end to an otherwise great game. While I may have some minor gripes with how some things were done in a few of the major villain encounters, overall I think they're all done really well and are all very engaging. All of the encounters are paced out excellently, always giving you a bit of downtime between each of them before throwing you into the next. I really appreciate how varied they are, with each villain focusing on different aspects of the gameplay. Each villain has their own unique gimmicks that keep the gameplay fresh from the very beginning of the game to the very end. One detail I particularly like is how throughout the game Batman's suit gets increasingly beat up. At the start of the game, the Batsuit is in pristine condition, but by the end, there are big gashes through the suit, Batman's bleeding, and the cape is pretty much torn to shreds. You can visibly see the toll that the events of the game have taken on Batman. And before he even has time to rest and clean up, Batman is called into action yet again. This entire ordeal was just another day in Batman's life. But this game's true greatest advantage is its atmosphere, and it's an advantage it has even over its successors. I want to avoid comparing this game too much to the series' later entries. It wouldn't be an entirely fair comparison since those games were made later with the benefit of hindsight. But in this case, the atmosphere is what really highlights what makes this game stand out from the others. It's what really keeps this game worth playing all these years later. While the later games leaned more towards realism, Arkham Asylum unashamedly embraces its comic book origins, and it comes out all the better for it. As I said before, the logical decision would have been to just make a cheap Dark Knight tie-in game. At the time, making a superhero game with this kind of production quality was a very risky move. The only good superhero games before Arkham Asylum were Spider-Man 2 and... yeah, that's it. The Dark Knight's massive success drew in many new potential Batman fans, and Arkham Asylum capitalized on that by providing them a deeper look at the Batman mythos, potentially turning them into lifelong fans. It worked for me. I'd always liked Batman ever since I first watched the Justice League cartoon as a kid, but Arkham Asylum
and Lego Batman
is what really solidified my love for this world and got me reading comic books. Overall, Batman Arkham Asylum is a fantastic experience that feels like a real love letter to the Batman legacy. The pacing is excellent, with how it slowly ramps up the action and spaces out each major villain encounter accordingly, so it never feels dull. They nailed the aesthetic with a perfect blend of comic book style and gritty realism, and the game excels at putting you in the shoes of the Dark Knight. The gameplay, the visuals, the sound design, the voice acting, they all come together to deliver this perfect fantasy of getting to become Batman. Arkham Asylum is a fine game, but it is an excellent Batman game. This game really does make you feel like Batman. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe for more, and stay tuned for next time when we cover Arkham City.